It's the 30th of April, 2021. Now, this incident happened in Heathrow Airport in London. It's a busy day in the airport as usual, but one passenger caught the attention of UK border officials. He had flown in from Accra, Ghana, and he was carrying just normal food boxes, or you can call them food containers, and his luggage. UK immigration officers approached him and took him to a room to conduct a search on his luggage. Anyway, his name was Kusi Appiah. He was a 51-year-old Ghanaian man. Something he carried in those food containers would change his life forever. Astonishingly, hidden inside the innocent-looking food containers in his luggage was 17 kilograms of pure cocaine. The street value of this would be somewhere around 1.3 million pounds. So Eric was arrested on the spot. And he thought it was over. He thought he had been caught alone. But what he didn't know was that his arrest was just the beginning. You see, because Eric wasn't working alone. He was part of a syndicate. That's a well-organized network moving substances across continents. And his capture would trigger an international operation that would bring down 3 more people and expose a sophisticated trafficking network stretching from Accra to London. This is the shocking case of how 4 Ghanaians, that's Eric, Albert, Jennifer, and Julius, were captured in the UK for drug trafficking. The channel is book number 7. And my name is Kusi. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. So let's rewind a bit to January that year. You see, before Eric's arrest, investigators in Ghana were already watching. In January 2021, the Narcotics Control Commission of Ghana, known as NACOC, had picked up on something suspicious. The commission had identified a syndicate operating out of the Kotoka International Airport in Accra. Now, this group was moving cocaine from Ghana to the United Kingdom. But identifying a syndicate and stopping it are 2 very different things. You see, NACOC needed evidence. They needed to catch the people in the act. And they needed international cooperation, because the substances were crossing borders. So they reached out to their partners in the UK, that's the National Crime Agency, or the NCA. For these people, they are the ones who handle serious organized crime in Britain. And so together, they began monitoring the situation. They were watching, waiting, and building their case. Then Eric made his move. And so on April 30th, 2021, he boarded a flight from Accra to London with a whopping 17 kilograms of cocaine hidden in food boxes. Now, when he landed at the Heathrow Airport in the UK border officials were ready. They searched his luggage.
Good afternoon, sir. We need to conduct a routine immigration check.
Of course, officer. Can I see your prime?
And they found the substances. And they arrested him immediately, just like how this famous Ghanaian model was arrested in this story over here. Watch that next after you are done watching this one. But here's where things get interesting. You see, instead of simply prosecuting Eric and moving on, NACOC and the NCA saw an opportunity. They realized Eric wasn't the mastermind and that he was a courier, which meant that there were others. And so if they played this right, they could catch them all. Following Eric's arrest, authorities launched what they called Operation Grid. The name might sound simple, but the operation was anything but. The goal of this was clear: use Eric's capture to identify and arrest every other member of the syndicate intelligence analysts got to work. They studied Eric's connections and they traced his movements. They monitored communications, and slowly a picture began to emerge. There were at least 3 other key players in this operation. Their names: Albert Ketre Jemfi, Jennifer Agyemang, and Julius Tete Poplampo. Now, here is where the operation got really clever. Instead of immediately arresting these suspects in Ghana, the authorities decided to let them make their own move. They wanted to catch them in the act, just like they had caught Eric. And so they watched and waited. Albert Jemfi was a 52-year-old. Jennifer Agyemang was 38. Both of them were preparing for their own trip to the UK, and the investigators knew exactly what they were planning. So on May 14th, 2021, just 2 weeks after Eric's arrest, Jennifer and Albert checked in for their flight at Kotoka International Airport. They went through security. They boarded a plane and they flew to London, completely unaware that authorities on both sides knew exactly who they were and what they were carrying. The flight would have been tense if they had known. Several hours in the air, so they had time to think or time to worry. But as far as they knew, everything was going according to plan. Eric's arrest was unfortunate, but for them, they felt it had nothing to do with them. They were different flights, different days, different cargo. So they thought, but boy, were they wrong. So on May 15, 2021, when their plane touched down at the Heathrow airport, UK border officials were waiting. As Jennifer and Albert collected their luggage and approached customs, officers moved in. A search revealed what investigators already knew would be there. That's 15 kilograms of cocaine. The street value of that was 1.1 million pounds. Both of them were arrested immediately. The substances were seized, and just like that, 2 more members of the syndicate were in custody. Now, you can imagine that moment. You've just completed an international flight, and you think you're about to collect a huge payout for delivering your cargo. And then suddenly, you're in handcuffs, facing years in a British prison, and everything that you thought you had built is gone. But you see, Operation Grid wasn't done yet. There was still one more person to catch, and that was Julius Tete Poplampo. Julius was different from the others. He was 56 years old, making him the oldest member of the group. But more importantly, Julius had a history. This wasn't his first time trafficking substances. No, in fact, he had already been convicted of the same offense way back in 2012. 10 years in a Ghanaian prison for trafficking cocaine from Ghana to the UK. Think about that. Julius had already served a decade behind bars for this exact crime. He knew the risks, and he knew the consequences, and he knew what prison was like. And yet, he was doing it again. Why? Maybe he needed the money. Maybe he thought he wouldn't be caught this time. Maybe prison had changed him in ways that made regular life impossible. Whatever his reasons were, Julius was about to pay an even heavier price. On August 13th, 2021, just 3 months after Jennifer and Albert's arrest, Julius boarded a flight from Accra to London. He had on him 6 kilograms of cocaine, and the street value for that was 480,000 pounds. The substances were concealed in the base of his suitcase. That was a common hiding method that border officials are trained to spot. So when Julius arrived at Heathrow Airport, the UK authorities were already expecting him. They went on ahead to search his luggage. and there they found the substances and placed them under arrest. Julius, the repeat offender, had been caught again. Over the following months, all 4 members of the syndicate faced justice in the British legal system. The venue was Isleworth Crown Court in London. It's a place where serious criminal cases are heard. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The substances had been found in their possession, and the amounts were substantial. And with Operation Great's detailed intelligence, prosecutors could show that this was an organized operation and not just isolated incidents. So one by one, they were convicted. The question was, how much time would they serve? Kusi Appiah, who was the first to be caught with his 17 kilograms hidden in food boxes, was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Albert K. Trejimfi, who had traveled with Jennifer, carrying on them 15 kilograms, received the harshest sentence. That's 9 years imprisonment. Jennifer Ajiman, the only woman in the group, was sentenced to 6 years and 9 months. And Julius Tete Poplampo, the repeat offender, who had already spent a decade in prison for the same crime, received 6 years and 9 months. And so together, the 4 had attempted to move 38 kilograms of cocaine worth over 2.88 million pounds in street value. And now they would serve a combined total of nearly 29 years in British prisons. But wait, there were others. You see, the story doesn't quite end there. On December 7, 2021, while the trials were still ongoing, NACOC made another announcement. 2 more individuals connected to the syndicate had been arrested in Ghana. Their names were never released to the public. We don't know their roles. We don't know if they were suppliers, organizers, or handlers. We don't know what sentences they received, if any. But their arrest shows that Eric, Albert, Jennifer, and Julius were just the visible part of a larger operation. Drug trafficking syndicates don't work in isolation. There are people who source the product, and there are people who package it, and then there are people who arrange the flights. Then you also have people who provide fake documents or the hiding places. You also have people who receive the shipments on the other end. You see, it's a whole network. The 4 who went to prison were the couriers. These are the ones who would physically carry the substances across borders. And they took the biggest risk and faced the most immediate consequences. But behind them was an entire structure that made their trips possible. Now, to really understand this story, you need to understand the route these substances take and why Ghana is part of it. You see, Ghana itself is not a major cocaine producing country. Cocaine comes primarily from South America. We are talking about places like Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. So why was cocaine being trafficked from Ghana to the UK? The answer is transit. Ghana, just like many West African countries, has become what law enforcement calls a transit point for the international narcotics trade. And here's how it works. The substances are produced in South America. Then they are moved across the Atlantic to West Africa, sometimes by ship, sometimes by plane, sometimes through elaborate smuggling routes. And so once in West Africa, the substances are repackaged and redistributed to European markets, particularly the UK. Now, one may ask, why this route? There are several reasons. First, West African countries often have less stringent border controls than direct flights from South America to Europe. Second, West African passport holders traveling to Europe may attract less scrutiny than travelers from known source countries. Third, the sheer volume of legitimate trade and travel between West Africa and Europe provides cover for illegal activities. Ghana's Kotoka International Airport is a major hub connecting West Africa to the rest of the world. We find thousands of legitimate passengers pass through this airport every day. It's a busy modern airport with connections to major cities globally. And hidden among all those legitimate travelers are couriers like Eric, Albert, Jennifer, and Julius. Now, the total amount seized from these 4 individuals was 38 kilograms. The street value was estimated at around 2.88 million pounds. That's over 2.8 million British pounds, or roughly, should you make the conversion here in Ghana cedis, that would be around 47 million Ghana cedis. And this is at the 2021 exchange value or exchange rates. But street value isn't what the couriers would have received. You see, street value is what the substances would be worth if they are sold in small quantities to the end users in the UK. The couriers would have been paid a tiny fraction of that, somewhere maybe a few £1,000s each for successfully delivering the shipment. Think about that risk-reward ratio. Jennifer, Albert, Eric, and Julius risked years in prison, and they all ended up serving those years for what was probably a payment of just a few £1,000s. Meanwhile, the people higher up in the organization, the ones who stayed safely in Ghana or elsewhere, stood to make hundreds of thousands or even millions. It's a calculation that doesn't make sense unless you are desperate, unless you're in debt, or unless you see no other options, or unless someone has convinced you that the risk is small, but the reward is worth it. But as these 4 discovered, the risk is very real, and the consequences are severe. Now, let's talk briefly about the economics from a different angle. You see, a kilogram of cocaine bought in Colombia might cost you somewhere around $1,000 to $2,000. And that same kilogram, once it reaches the UK, now has a street value of around £40,000 to about £80,000. And that's depending on the purity and market conditions. Now, with this massive markup, here we are talking about a 20 to 40 times increase in value. This is what it is that drives the entire trade. The difference between the production price and the street price is profit, and that profit gets distributed among everyone in the supply chain. The producers in South America get a small cut. The transporters moving it across the ocean get more. The people operating the transit points in West Africa take their share. The couriers flying it into Europe get paid. And the distributors in the UK also get paid. And then the street level dealers get paid. But here's the thing. Most of the profit goes to the people at the top. That's the major traffickers and organized crime bosses who never touch the product themselves. They are the ones getting rich. The couriers like Eric, Albert, Jennifer, and Julius, they are getting a few $1,000s just to risk years in prison. And when you look at that, you can tell it's a terrible deal from any rational perspective. So, where are they now? Well, as I narrate this scandal to you in November 2025, Eric, Albert, Jennifer, and Julius are still in British prisons serving their sentences. Eric, who was sentenced to 6 years, is probably more than halfway through his sentence by now. Depending on good behavior, he might be looking at release within the next couple of years. For Albert, with his 9-year sentence, that has a longer wait ahead. For him, he wouldn't be eligible for release until the late 2020s at the earliest. And for Jennifer and Julius, who are both serving 6 years and 9 months, are in similar positions to Eric, likely approaching the second half of their sentences. When they are eventually released, they won't simply walk free. As foreign nationals convicted of serious crimes, they will be deported back to Ghana. They will return with no money, criminal records that will make employment difficult, and the stigma of being convicted drug traffickers. Starting over after that will be incredibly hard. Some people manage to rebuild their lives after prison, while others struggle for years or may easily fall back into crime. The path ahead for these four is uncertain, but what is sure about this is that it is definitely difficult. Remember those two additional people arrested in Ghana in December 2021? The ones whose names were never released? Their part in this story remains mysterious. Were they the suppliers who provided the cocaine to the couriers? Were they the organizers who arranged the flights and the payments? Were they the handlers at the airport who helped get the substances past initial security? We don't know, and we probably never will unless more information is released. But their arrests show that Operation Grid didn't just catch the visible tip of the iceberg. It went deeper, identifying and arresting people working behind the scenes in Ghana itself. This is important because couriers are replaceable. If you arrest 4 couriers, a syndicate can recruit 4 more. But if you arrest the organizers and suppliers, you can actually disrupt their operation in a meaningful way. The fact that these 2 were arrested in Ghana rather than at a UK airport suggests they played a different role than the 4 couriers. They were probably more central to the operation, which means their arrest might have had a bigger long-term impact on this particular syndicate than the 4 courier arrests, even though they got less attention. Share your thoughts at the comment section below and watch these 2 videos next. I'll see you there. Love you. This is the shocking case of how 4 Ghanaians
Now, take it again from the top. If you get to an intriguing end, pause a bit before you continue so that I can add that kind of soundbite. Like boom.
Okay. But what he didn't know. Okay. Now, when he landed at Heathrow Airport in the UK, on December 7th, 2021, while the trials were still going, NACOC made another announcement. 2 more individuals were connected to the... You see, Ghana itself is not a major cocaine producing country. You see, Ghana itself is not a major country.
You will choke. I really about this one
From the workers to now. Chickens then be like that. Once they hear the conversation, I don't know what to be. Once they hear the conversation, they go on. Or even phone calls, I always they get that. Yeah. Anyway. For Albert, with his 9-year sentence, when they are eventually released, they won't simply walk free. As foreign nationals convicted of serious crimes, they'll be deported back to Ghana.
As foreign nationals, blah blah blah, they'll be deported back to Ghana, to a nation.
Okay.
That's expression of it. Let's go.
They were probably more central to the operation, which means their arrest might have had... They were probably more central to the operation, which means their arrest might have had a bigger, longer term...
The arrest you're listening.
Yeah. They were probably more central to the operation, which means their arrest might have had a bigger long-term impact on this particular syndicate than the 4 courier arrests.
Take it again, last one.